Thank you for watching AM Northwest this morning. A handshake can make or break a first impression. So really, we better get it right. Here to teach us, we welcome back the author of Human Lie Detection and Body Language 101, Vanessa Van Edwards. Good to see you.
Happy to see you.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
So how important is a good handshake?
Oh, it is so important. So when we're making that first impression, a lot of how we judge someone's personality is based on their handshake. They say that we can judge 4 of 5 personality traits just by handshake alone. I know. The problem is these days, because of germs, because we're, we're not used to it, we might give a little wave or a high five or a fist bump. But the problem with that is you can't really tell much from a fist bump. In fact,
you're right.
When we're bonding with someone, when we shake hands, that touch-to-touch releases something called oxytocin. So handshake is actually really important for the connection between people, because when you shake hands, your brain is like, this is someone I have to make a connection to. So it's really important to make the foundation of trust and connection.
Okay, so what are some tips to having a good handshake, and what makes up a good handshake?
All right, so let's start with the first one, and the first one is vertical. So if we put our hands out like this, and you go right up and down, we're keeping our hands vertical.
Right.
I don't know if anyone watching has ever had their hand flipped.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So when your hand is flipped, so when my hand is flipped up, from an evolutionary perspective, if the inner part of my wrist is showing up, it's actually a very weak place to be.
Right.
It's exposing, your veins. It's hard to have leverage. So when someone flips you up like that, it's actually a way of them saying,
I've got the power.
I've got the power.
That's like when dogs meet at the dog park.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's kind of like our sniffing. Right? It's how we sniff each other out. So if you are flipped up, you have to make a very good mental note that this person wants to show that they are in charge. Right?
That's really good.
Right. And you also don't want to offer your hand up, because that shows that you feel more weak, that you don't feel like you belong there. So if you want to have a nice equal relationship, you want to offer your hand nice and vertical, and then move up and down.
Okay, what about the eye contact?
All right, so eye contact, I know that's not essentially part of the handshake, but eye contact is actually a really important part of having a good handshake. That's because if you're shaking hands with someone and you're making eye contact, you get double the oxytocin.
Right.
So when you're making eye contact with someone, you're literally saying, I want to connect with you. That first few moments is more important than anything you could say in your elevator pitch. I know that sounds crazy.
Well, yeah. How big an impact does it make, really?
So think about a time when you met someone and you were trying to make a connection with them, and they were either looking down or looking away or looking over your head. You remember those people.
Right.
You remember those people, in fact, more than the people who've given you good handshakes.
Sure.
And that's because it is a red flag. If someone doesn't make eye contact with us, some part of our brain goes, this person is hiding something from me. So even if you're not, even if you do it by accident, making sure you connect with your hands and then also make eye contact, it's important for that trust.
You also don't want to, I've had handshakes that are really hard, and that's like a little intense too.
So let's talk about firmness.
Okay.
And this is the hardest part of good handshakes. So think about, this sounds weird, but you'll go with me on this.
Okay.
So think about squeezing like a peach. Right, you're at the grocery store and you're like squeezing a peach, and you kind of squeeze enough where you start to feel the squishiness, but then it starts to get hard. That's kind of the same thing you want to do with a handshake. When you squeeze someone's hand, it should feel nice and relaxed. The moment you feel any tension, you know you've gone too hard.
Okay.
And you also want to make sure you're not doing it too soft. So you know how sometimes people will give you just the end of their fingers?
Oh, I don't like that one.
Oh,
I
yes.
don't like that one
I have a friend who, when a woman gives him just her hand, he kisses their
that's
their
funny.
hand. So it's really important that you don't give too weak, so you don't give just your fingers.
Right.
So you'll want to squeeze them back. It's kind of like giving a hand hug. Right? If you think about it that way, if you don't give that firmness back, it's like you're saying, I don't want to have that intimacy. I don't want to have that connection with you.
Right.
And if you've ever been told, woo, that handshake is hard, you know that you probably shake too hard. Yeah, just take it down one notch.
Now, some people, too, end up with kind of a wet handshake, which is a little interesting,
Yes, okay, so I know that we can't help it.
Sometimes some people are nervous.
I know you're nervous.
It happens on the show here,
Yeah, or a networking event. So here's a couple tricks for you. One, men can actually have tissues in their pockets. So right before they shake someone's hand, they can put their hands in their pockets and dry off their hands on the tissue.
Okay.
The other one, which I love, is if you're at a networking event or on a date, get a glass, like a glass of wine or a glass of water, and wrap it with a napkin and hold the glass with the napkin. That way your hand stays dry sometimes you're holding a drink and the drink is sweaty, and so it makes your hand wet.
Right, yeah, I did see
So
that.
if you have a napkin around your drink, it actually can keep your hand dry, and you can dry it on the napkin right before you shake someone's hand.
And what's the idea of how many times you should shake?
Okay, so
Motion up and down.
So the natural one is 1 to 3. So think about this in terms of how much time you have. For example, if you're in a rush, usually we'll be like, nice to meet you. 1 up and down shake. But if you are like lingering, have you ever had someone go, so nice to meet you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 1 to 3.
Now that's when I usually, when that happens, it's like, great talking to you.
Exactly.
You have to go, I have to get my hand out of here.
So let's talk about that.
Okay.
So 1 to 3 is good. Now let's say that someone is either over gripping you, they're over pumping, or they're holding too long. The best way to do it is to counteract with the other hand. So if you're shaking my hand and I want you to let go, I can lightly pat your hand. Yeah, I got you. I got it.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And it will usually signal to them, release.
Gotcha.
So you can reach over and do that. Politicians also do the double handshake. Have you seen politicians?
Right.
They'll reach out and double handshake. So the reason for that is because it's double the amount of oxytocin. So it can...
That makes sense.
Yeah, and that can be a good thing. I would say proceed with caution, though. You want to be a little careful. If you're not comfortable with touch, if someone's not comfortable, and you reach out and you do the double handshake, they can sometimes stiffen or back away because it's too much in their intimate zone.
What about people who you don't know if they're going in for a handshake or a hug?
Right. Okay, so what I like to do when someone's approaching me and I'm like, we're friends, so are they going to handshake or hug, is I do the standard position of 1 hand out and 1 hand like this. So if we just handshake, it's okay because then I can tap their hand or say, it's so nice to see you. But if they go in for the hug, it's still...
Oh, you got it.
Okay, so this is the safe way to approach someone who you're not sure if they're going to do a handshake or hug. And if you don't want to be hugged, sometimes that happens if it's maybe someone you're not as comfortable with. Put both of your hands out in this position. So you're taking their hand, but you're showing, I don't want you to come in for the full hug. You're actually blocking your torso. So that's a really easy way to block it.
What makes a lot of sense is that the oxytocin that you say that's released, explains why you can connect with people. It explains why the cuddler in Portland is doing so well.
Yes, so oxytocin is nicknamed the cuddle hormone.
Oh, that's funny.
It's actually called that, and that's because when you cuddle, you're releasing, I actually cuddled with her to test oxytocin.
Okay.
And so it actually boosts your oxytocin in a lot of ways. The same thing with a hug, with a pat on the shoulder.
Right.
Now, just to be aware, when you move up the arm, the farther up the arm you go, the more intimate the touch becomes. So hand touching is the least intimate. Forearm, upper arm, back, anywhere close to the torso, that's more intimate. So if you're at work or if you're meeting a new person and you pat them on the back, know that that's actually slightly more intimate than just a touch on the hand or a handshake.
Right.
So you want to be careful not to go a little too close into the torso.
Vanessa, good tips. As always, thank you very much. All right, we'll put the information too on our website at k2.com. Human Lie Detection and Body Language 101. Vanessa Van Edwards, always good to talk with you.
Wait, before you go, think of one person who could benefit from this video and send it to them. You'll make their day.